Tonight, on First at 9 this Friday the 25th of April 2025. Continuing support. Sri Lanka and the International Monetary Fund reached staff-level agreement for the fourth review under the Extended Fund Facility. Sri Lanka to receive another $334 million upon approval by the IMF Executive Board. Global lender urges Sri Lanka to diversify export markets and foster an investment-friendly environment amid economic uncertainty. Trade talks. Sri Lanka and the United States agree to expedite discussions to finalize a bilateral trade agreement. Special Exposition. Exposition of the sacred tooth relic of Lord Buddha to conclude on Sunday. Exposition will not be extended under any circumstances. Organisers affirm. Newly arrived devotees barred from joining queues.
Cinec Campus Open Day. මේ මස 3 වෙනි දින උදෑසන 9 සිට Cinec Campus පරිශ්‍රයේදී.
This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9, brought to you by the nation's most trusted news source, Derana. I'm Tharindu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Now in your top story this evening, Sri Lanka and the International Monetary Fund have reached a staff-level agreement on economic policies to conclude the fourth review of Sri Lanka's reform program supported by the IMF's Extended Fund Facility. Upon approval of the review by the IMF Executive Board, Sri Lanka will gain access to approximately $344 million, bringing the total IMF financial support to the island nation to around $1.7 billion. In a statement regarding the staff-level agreement, the IMF noted that overall program performance remains strong and that Sri Lanka's economic growth is rebounding. The agreement was reached following discussions held in Colombo and during the IMF and World Bank spring meetings in Washington, D.C. The IMF highlighted that revenue mobilization, reserve accumulation and structural reforms are progressing as planned and that debt restructuring efforts are nearing completion. However, the global lender cautioned that ongoing uncertainty in global trade policy presents significant downside risks to Sri Lanka's economic outlook. Quoting IMF Mission Chief for Sri Lanka, Evan Papayogiou, the statement clarified that the staff-level agreement remains subject to approval by the IMF Executive Board. Approval is contingent upon the implementation of prior actions including restoring cost recovery, electricity pricing and ensuring the proper functioning of the automatic electricity price adjustment mechanism and the completion of a financing assurances review to confirm the commitments of multilateral partners and adequate progress in debt restructuring. Following the Executive Board's approval, Sri Lanka would receive an additional disbursement of approximately $344 million, increasing the total support disbursed under the program to around $1.722 billion. According to Mission Chief Papayogiou, most end March quantitative targets for which data is available have been met, and the majority of structural benchmarks due by end April were either achieved or implemented with some delays. He emphasized the importance of reforms aimed at boosting tax compliance to generate necessary revenue without imposing additional tax measures. Looking ahead, Papayogiou stressed that maintaining the momentum of reform, particularly efforts to reduce corruption vulnerabilities, is vital to preserve recent economic gains, ensure lasting macroeconomic and debt sustainability and foster robust inclusive growth. Meanwhile, the International Monetary Fund urged Sri Lanka to diversify export markets and foster an investment-friendly environment even amid economic uncertainty created due to recent tariff changes. Presenting the IMF's economic outlook for the Asia and Pacific regions, the director of the IMF's Asia-Pacific Department, Krishna Srinivasan, said Sri Lanka must build on the stability created through the IMF-supported program with a view to achieving more durable growth. The 2025 spring meetings of the World Bank Group and the International Monetary Fund commenced on the 21st of April and will continue until April 26th. Yesterday, a session was held on the IMF's economic outlook for the Asia-Pacific regions, headed by the director of the IMF's Asia-Pacific Department, Krishna Srinivasan.
The team was in Sri Lanka not too long ago, and they were in the midst of having discussion with the authorities when these tariffs were announced. So for the team, it became quite difficult to put together a macro framework which takes into account the tariffs and the implications they have on growth, on exports, and so on and so forth. The team is back here, and we've continued discussions with the authorities. This is a country which is affected by huge tariffs. The impact on the government sector could be quite significant, and there are other sectors also, not just Sri Lanka, but all countries. They need to think in terms of a diversification of their export markets, greater integration within the region. All these things can help mitigate the risks which come with tariffs from one country. Going beyond that, I think in the case of Sri Lanka, investment can still be propped up. Again, we would say create the environment for domestic investment to pick up, not necessarily through tax exemptions and incentives. Keep your fiscal consolidation, keep your fiscal integrity intact, but promote investment by providing an environment where private investment can flourish. These are things which can be done going beyond the program we have right now. The program has led to a significant amount of macro stability, which has led to growth picking up, inflation coming down. So the time is right for Sri Lanka to embark on broader structural reforms which will promote private investment and get growth going on a more durable basis.
Now, Sri Lanka and the United States have agreed to expedite discussions between the two nations in order to finalize a bilateral trade agreement. This mutual commitment was expressed during a meeting with the Sri Lankan delegation currently in Washington, D.C. for discussions with the International Monetary Fund and officials from the Office of the United States Trade Representative. During the meetings, Sri Lankan representatives presented proposals to U.S. officials on reducing Sri Lanka's trade deficit with the US, as well as the reciprocal tariffs imposed on Sri Lankan exports to the US. The Sri Lankan delegation met with United States Trade Representative Ambassador Jamieson Greer at the office of the United States Trade Representative in Washington, D.C. on the 22nd of April. The team has briefed Ambassador Greer on the steps taken by the Sri Lankan government to restore the economy and expressed Sri Lanka's commitment to working with the United States to reduce the trade deficit and eliminate tariff and non-tariff barriers. The United States, in its latest round of reciprocal tariffs, imposed 44% duties on imports from Sri Lanka, increasing from 12.2%. During the meeting, Ambassador Greer expressed hope that an agreement could be reached expeditiously to ensure a fair and equitable trade relationship between the two nations. The Sri Lankan delegation also held discussions with Assistant U.S. Trade Representative for South and Central Asia, Brendan Lynch, and the Trade Representative's Office's Director for South Asia, Emily Ashby. They provided further details on the proposals previously submitted in writing by Sri Lanka. Both parties agreed to continue negotiations with the aim of reaching a bilateral trade agreement as soon as possible. Now, President Anura Dissanayake claims that 2025 will be the year Sri Lanka's treasury records its highest ever annual revenue. Addressing an NPP public rally in Anura today, the president vowed that the NPP government would be responsible with public funds.
Another NPP public rally themed outcome is clear, victory is ours, in view of the upcoming local government election was held in Anuradhapura today under the patronage of President Anura Dissanayake.
We
will create a law-abiding country. I can assure you that the National People's Power is currently working to fulfill all of your expectations. They will definitely be fulfilled. Are there any political parties at the moment? No, they are all gone now. We increased fertilizer subsidies from 15,000 to 25,000 rupees. If it is late by even a day, there are some individuals who will complain about it. We did not have any financial issues. Therefore, we allocated all the necessary funds to provide fertilizer subsidies for the Yala season. The delay was caused when the Department of Agrarian Services failed to present the necessary documents. The department must compile reports on the subsidies given to each farmer. This will be the year that will generate the highest revenue for the treasury. Every cent will be protected and we have stopped wastage and theft. A government has been formed that utilizes every cent for the betterment of the people and the country. If someone is attempting to form another government, I can assure that they will only be able to form a government if they are better than us.
සිනෙක් කැම්පස් ඕපන් ඩේ මැයි මස 3 වෙනි දින උදෑසන 9 සිට සිනෙක් කැම්පස් පරිශ්‍රයේදී.
Meanwhile, opposition leader Sajjit Premadasa appeals to all citizens to unite to end the persistent deception of the government and establish an era of the common man. Speaking at an SJB public meeting in Mathura today, Premadasa pointed out that the NPP government has continuously failed to fulfill their pre-election promises to the public.
A public meeting of the Sarvajanabal in view of the local government elections was held in Mathura under the patronage of party leader of the opposition Sajjit Premadasa.
The government has started to fabricate more dramas within the political arena as they have failed to fulfill the pledges they made prior to the election in their election manifesto, which they claim was the path to a thriving nation and a beautiful life. They pledged to grant employment opportunities for 35,000 unemployed graduates through their inaugural budget itself. The MP, who obtained hundreds of thousands of votes, hails from this district. Did they grant employment opportunities for those unemployment graduates? However, back then, they vowed to provide them jobs with a single pen stroke. They have been deceiving and misleading the public since then. Not only then, they also pledged to institute a significant transformation in the agricultural sector of the country. The only transformation they have made is that the fertilizer subsidies are now only given after the harvesting period is over. This government is trying to maintain their authority and ministerial portfolios by continuing to deceive the public and blabbering lies 24/7. We request the general public to assist us in putting an end to this deception. By doing so, let's unite together to establish an era for the common man.
Meanwhile, several local government authority representatives of the United National Party representing the Kalatura district met with the opposition leader today and assured their support in the impending elections. The event saw the attendance of several political figures including former MP Lakshman Wijayamana.
Meanwhile, leader of the Sarvajanabal, MP Dilith Jayavira, asserts that Sri Lanka's national security is in jeopardy as the authorities in charge of national security lack the necessary experience. Addressing a Sarvajanabal public meeting in Mirigama today, Jayavira claimed that the country lacks the necessary intelligence information as well as the ability to properly analyse it.
Another meeting in the series of public gatherings organised by Sarvajanabal for the 2025 local government elections was held today in Mirigama under the patronage of the party leader, parliamentarian Dilith Jayavira.
The current state of the country is extremely critical. Frankly, I don't believe even I should be taking such risk at this time. The condition of public security is deeply concerning. National and public security are intrinsically linked, and it is the government's responsibility to ensure the safety of its citizens. Today, the public faces unprecedented danger. The frequency and brutality of murders are alarming. I raised this issue clearly in Parliament. We are facing a serious threat to our national security. The core issue lies in the fact that those currently in charge of national security lacks the necessary experience. I have consistently highlighted the concerns regarding intelligence reports and the action taken based on the data in those reports. Unfortunately, those warnings were ignored. As a result, we now face a dual crisis: the absence of timely intelligence and the inability to properly analyze the information we do receive.
The Mathura Magistrates Court today held suspended IGP Deshabandhu Tennakon in contempt of court for bringing his vehicle into the court premises on the 10th of April while leaving the premises after being released on bail. The court further directed the Attorney General to file contempt of court charges against Tennakon before the Court of Appeal.
On the 10th of April, the Mathura Magistrates Court granted bail to suspended IGP Deshabandhu Tennakon, who was held under remand custody for 22 days after surrendering to court in relation to the 2023 shooting in Waligama. However, the suspended IGP was summoned before the Mathura Magistrates Court today for allegedly acting in violation of court orders when leaving the court premises on the day of his release. The Attorney General had submitted a motion stating that Deshabandhu Tennakon had violated court orders by bringing a motor vehicle into the court premises for him to leave the premises on the 10th of April. The relevant motion was taken up for hearing this afternoon. Additional Solicitor General Dilip Apiris, appearing on behalf of the Attorney General, submitted that Deshabandhu Tennakon and Roshan Lakshita, who was travelling in the vehicle on the day Tennakon was granted bail, should be held in contempt of court. Subsequently, the Additional Solicitor General presented facts regarding the way in which the vehicle was brought into the court premises. He revealed that the vehicle in question had been parked at the parking lot reserved for judges. He added that a police officer at the gate had informed the passengers that the permission of the ASP is required for the vehicle to be parked inside. Subsequently, they had obtained the permission of the Mathura Assistant Superintendent of Police. Subsequently, Mathura magistrate Aruna Buddhasena raised concerns over the power vested in the Mathura ASP to allow a vehicle to enter the court premises. Responding to these claims, President's counsel Anuja Premaratna, who appeared on behalf of Deshabandhu Tennakone, stated that his client was unaware that the vehicles are not allowed within the court premises and reiterated that Tennakone had not heard the relevant court ruling. Subsequently, the Mathura Magistrates Court held suspended IGP Deshabandhu Tennakone in contempt of court for bringing his vehicle into the court premises and directed the Attorney General to file contempt of court charges against Tennakone before the Court of Appeal. In the meantime, the acting IGP has been informed to nominate a police investigation team to assist the investigation of the Committee of Inquiry appointed to inquire and report its findings on IGP Deshabandhu Tennakone in relation to alleged gross abuses of power. This was informed when the committee met for the second time in Parliament today.
Former President Ranil Wickremesinghe will appear before the Bribery Commission next Monday, the 28th of April, over his statement regarding the bribery charges against New Democratic Front MP Chamara Sampath Dissanayake. The former president was scheduled to appear before the Commission this morning following a prior postponement from the original date of the 17th of April. Former President Ranil Wickremesinghe's attorneys have informed the Commission to investigate allegations of bribery or corruption that he will appear before the Commission at 9:30 a.m. next Monday, the 28th of April. Wickremesinghe was initially summoned by the Bribery Commission on April 17th, but the former president requested a different date, citing that his attorneys will not be available in Colombo during the Sinhala and Tamil New Year period. Accordingly, the Bribery Commission informed him to appear before the Commission at 9:30 a.m. this morning. The summons concerns a statement by the former president on April 10th that MP Chamara Sampath Dissanayake withdrew the fixed deposits belonging to the Uva Provincial Council, over which he is now facing corruption charges in accordance with a circular issued during his tenure as Prime Minister during the presidency of Maithripala Sirisena. The former president also questioned whether the MP's arrest over the matter was in response to his vocal criticism of the government in Parliament. MP Dissanayake is currently under remand custody over his alleged misappropriation of funds from a fixed deposit belonging to the Uva Provincial Council at a state bank in 2016. Welcome back. You're once again joining First at 9 on Other Derana 24. Now, Pakistani army troops opened fire at various locations along the line of control in Jammu and Kashmir earlier today in an attempt to breach the ceasefire agreement, leading the Indian army to retaliate with shots of their own. Tensions between the two neighbouring nations escalated with the deadly attacks on tourists in Indian Kashmir earlier this week, killing 26 people. The shooting by the Pakistani army came hours before Indian Army Chief General Upendra Dwivedi was set to visit Srinagar and Udhampur today. General Dwivedi later visited Srinagar following the exchange of fire to assess the situation in the valley. Meanwhile, Indian security forces confirmed today that during an operation in Jammu and Kashmir's Bandipora district, it had killed Altaf Alali, a leader of Pakistani Islamist Salafi jihadist group Lashkar-e-Taiba, which has connections to the Resistance Front, which claimed responsibility for the Pahalgam attack. In the meantime, India's Minister of External Affairs Dr. S. Jaishankar met the Minister of Home Affairs Amit Shah to discuss the aftermath of the terrorist attack in Pahalgam. Additionally, the central government convened an all-party meeting yesterday to address the security concerns and formulate a unified response to the tragic incident. Leader of opposition in the Lok Sabha Rahul Gandhi today said the idea behind the Pahalgam terror attack was to divide the people of the country, and it was imperative that India stood united to defeat terrorism once and for all. There is a fear that India could conduct a military strike in Pakistani territory as it did in 2019 in retaliation for a suicide bombing in Indian-controlled Kashmir that killed at least 40 Indian paramilitary police personnel. Against this backdrop, the United Nations urged India and Pakistan to show maximum restraint as the nuclear-armed rivals imposed tit-for-tat diplomatic measures over the deadly shooting in Kashmir. India yesterday closed a border crossing and suspended a water-sharing treaty, while Pakistan closed its airspace for Indian airlines and rejected New Delhi's suspension of the water-sharing treaty. Meanwhile, Sri Lankan President Anura Dissanayake today condemned the recent terrorist attack in the Pahalgam area of Kashmir and expressed solidarity with the Indian people in a phone conversation with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Meanwhile, in Sri Lanka, opposition politicians expressed concerns about Sri Lanka's national security as tensions between India and Pakistan intensify.
දැන් ඉන්දියාවයි පාකිස්තානයයි අතරේ
A tense situation has now arisen between India and Pakistan. It is uncertain whether this will escalate into a war. However, if such a conflict does occur, Sri Lanka may be compelled to support India due to the secret agreements signed by President Anura Dissanayake. As a result, we could be inevitably drawn into the war. If President Dissanayake and Tilwin Silva consider themselves patriots, they must disclose the contents of these agreements to the public.
රටට දැන්වත් හෙළි කළ යුතුයි.
නලින්ද ජයතිස්ස ඇමතුමා කියන
Minister Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa has stated that we should get the permission from India if Sri Lanka is to reveal the details of these deals. How shameful is that? Numerous agreements have been signed before in the past, yet none have contained such unusual stipulations. It is even questionable whether the President or other ministers know the contents of the agreements that they have signed.
ජනාධිපතිතුමාත් මේ ගිවිසුම දැක්කද කියලා.
දැන් අපි ඒගොල්ලෝ කියන එක කරන්න ඕනේ.
At present, we are obligated to follow India's lead. If war breaks out with Pakistan, we will be forced to take India's side. We have already witnessed India's ability to block Pakistan's water sources. A nation capable of stopping a river could also potentially disrupt our electricity and fuel supplies. One concerning development is the case of Colombo Dockyard. Currently, 51% of its shares are owned by a Japanese firm. There are plans to sell these shares to India-based Mazagan Dock Shipbuilders Limited, a company known for manufacturing warships and submarines. If India begins constructing warships in Colombo Dockyard and Pakistan retaliates, who will take responsibility for putting our nation at risk?
කාලකයෝ වග කියනවද මේ?
Welcome back to First at 9. Now, the funeral of the late Pope Francis will be held tomorrow in St. Peter's Square in Vatican City. Foreign Minister Vijitha Herath will represent Sri Lanka at the late Pontiff's funeral.
Pope Francis, who is the head of Catholic Church, died on Monday morning at the age of 88. The late Pope's funeral will be held on 26th of April in St. Peter's Square, Vatican City. The Vatican informed that more than 130 delegates with 50 heads of state, along with the US President Donald Trump and reigning monarchs, are expected in St. Peter's Square for the funeral, with many more expected to watch on television. In the meantime, authorities in Rome have beefed up security ahead of the ceremony. Snipers will be placed on rooftops with drones in the sky and an army device to neutralize hostile flying objects. Representing the government of Sri Lanka, Minister Foreign Affairs, Foreign Employment and Tourism Vijitha Herath will attend the funeral of His Holiness Pope Francis. The opposition members of Parliament Dr. Kavinda Jayawardena and Hector Apuhami also reached the Vatican to attend the funeral of late Pope Francis. The duo also attend the funeral service tomorrow. The Sri Lankan government also declared 26th of April as the National Day of Mourning in view of late Pope Francis's funeral.
Despite heavy downpours in Kandy, over 90,000 devotees had the esteemed opportunity to venerate the sacred tooth relic of Lord Buddha on the 8th day of the special exposition held today. As overwhelming crowds are gathering in Kandy to pay homage to the sacred Buddhist relic, concerns regarding waste management and crowd control within the sacred city of Kandy were raised.
The special exposition of the sacred tooth relic of Lord Buddha, titled Siri Dalada Vandanava, which commenced on the 18th of April, continued for the 8th consecutive day today. Over 400,000 devotees gathered in Kandy, forming long queues to pay homage to one of the most sacred Buddhist relics in the world. Thousands of devotees are seen in queues centered along the three access routes from Dissanayake Vidya to the temple's entrance, from Rathabokua through Sangarajamavata to the main entrance of the temple, and from Rathabokua through the temple grounds to the main entrance. Meanwhile, President Anura Dissanayake engaged with the devotees waiting in queues to venerate the sacred tooth relic as he paid a sudden visit last night. With large numbers of devotees gathering to venerate the sacred tooth relic, concerns have been raised over waste management in the sacred city of Kandy, as those remaining in queues were seen disposing of waste indiscriminately. Despite directives issued to devotees to systematically dispose garbage and use sanitary facilities, the situation continued through the day. Residents of Kandy expressed their displeasure over garbage disposed in areas surrounding their residences.
මේගොල්ලෝ බලාපොරොත්තු වුණු විදියට සෙනගක් මෙහාට ආවා. ඒකයි ප්‍රධාන හේතුව. අවුරුද්දකින් හරි අවුරුදු දෙකෙන් දෙකට හරි මේ ප්‍රධානිය පවත්වන්න ඕන. ඒතර මේ වගේ අපහසුතාවට පත් වෙන්නේ නැහැ.
කැම්ප් එකට අරගෙන කැම්ප් එකට එහෙමම බීම කන්න බැරි නම් නොගෙන ඉන්න ඕනේ. මේක පුරාම බලන්නකො අපි ගෙවල් වල ඉන්නේ නැද්ද? තාම කවුරුත් ඇවිල්ලා බැලුවෙත් නැහැ. කාලා ඕමම දාලා ගියා. ඊට පස්සේ පාර රාස්ති වෙනවා. ඒක එක තැනකට දාන්න අර පොලිසියෙන් මාත්‍යා ආමිලා රාලාමිලා ඔක්කොම ඇවිල්ලා කියනවා එක තැනකට දාන්න කියලා. එයාලා දාන්නේ නැහැ.
පරිසරය ඉවරයි. අනිත් අය තව ලොකු වැස්සක් ආවා නම් සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම අකුරන වගේ යට වෙනවා.
හැම ගරගෙන පාර්සල් පිටි. වතුර බෝතලේ පිටි. සමහර ඒවා එක උකුරයි බීලා තියෙනවා. ඒක දාලා ගිහලා කියන්නේ අගයක් නැතිකමනේ.
Taking the situation into consideration, several volunteer groups, including teams deployed under the Clean Sri Lanka National Initiative, engaged in cleanups in Kandy.
We have been engaging in cleanups for 7 days. Close to 600 volunteers are working under the Clean Sri Lanka initiative. We are conducting awareness sessions for teachers, state employees, students and other groups in Kandy. There are 3 access routes related to the special exposition. Our teams are deployed along all 3 routes. As the Clean Sri Lanka team, we have installed 400 waste bins. We have also installed over 200 toilets for devotees.
Against this backdrop, Sri Lanka police yesterday announced that newly arriving devotees will not be permitted to join the queues under any circumstances. Meanwhile, in a special statement today, Chief Custodian of the Temple of Tooth Relic, Pradeep Nilangadala, asserted that the special exposition of the sacred tooth relic of Lord Buddha will definitely conclude on the 27th of April as scheduled. It is reported that 91,800 devotees were blessed with the esteemed opportunity of venerating the sacred tooth relic throughout the proceedings of the special exposition today.
Now, in international developments, as the tariff war between China and the United States continues, China has exempted some US imports from its 125% tariffs and is asking firms to identify critical goods they need levy-free. According to 3 import agencies in the southern technology hub of Shenzhen, China appears to have quietly rolled back retaliatory tariffs of 125% on some semiconductors made in the United States. Several US companies have commented that they have been cancelling shipments of essential items from China and halting new orders after the 145% tariff on nearly all Chinese imports this month. On April 12th, China raised its reciprocal tariffs to 125% for all goods originating from the United States in response to US President Donald Trump's move to hike levies on Chinese goods to a sky high of 145%. That's all for tonight from First at 9. Thank you for joining. Have a great night.